So 17 days left to the big day. You know what I'm talking about. I see somebody's been busy back here. This is beautiful. Beautiful. We're talking a minute about some Christmas fact and fiction and some myths and truths. What's that is? Poisonous or not? No. Apparently they can make you eat sick, but you have to eat hundreds of them. And if you eat hundreds of them, then, maybe it's just as well. December 25th. That's a big fiction, huh? Probably did not happen on December 25th. Don't really know when it happened. Apparently nobody even thought it was something of interest for a couple hundred years after the fact. And when they decided it might be important to celebrate the birth of Jesus, nobody knew when it was. Nobody could remember. Nobody was around. They did some digging. A lot of dates were put forth. Some in the summer, some in the spring, some in the fall, some in the winter. They decided to go with spring. And that lasted 100 years or so. I don't know what was wrong with spring. But then there was a decree that it would be December 25th, which just so happened to fall on the same date as another not-so-Christian holiday. And perhaps it was a matter of convenience, and that's okay. Does it matter? What else? Bethlehem. That was the big place, right? Well, maybe not. Apparently there's some holes in that story of that whole census thing where Mary and Joseph had to go to Bethlehem. The timing's not quite right. There really would be no requirement for a person that was not a Roman citizen to go. And maybe another just story of convenience to make the birth of Jesus match up with what the prophets had said hundreds of years before. 3 kings. That would be a no and a no. Not so much kings as magi, which I'm not exactly sure what magi are. Astrologers maybe, certainly wise people, apparently men. 3, maybe not. I don't know where we got that from. There were 3 gifts, right? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. I guess we're assuming that only one person brought one gift, which is kind of chintzy for kings or wise men. So we don't know. Maybe there was 1, maybe there was 10, a dozen. Nobody knows. It's one of those things that we've just come to assume. Star of Bethlehem? No. We came up with that term. There was a star, that's listed, that's identified. That was calling forth these wise men. Resting over Bethlehem? No. Maybe not again. How about the stable? The whole Silent Night theme of Mother and Joseph. Anybody have a nativity scene here? Got it out at home, arrange them all. Anybody have camels in theirs? Good camels. I don't know if there were camels there. Apparently there were no nativity scenes either until St. Francis decided some animals should be involved in this whole thing. And so we got the donkey and the camels and sheep, of course. Sheep everywhere. And a little drummer boy. No drummer boy either. That would have been nice, but no drummer boy. How about the virgin birth? All I'll say to the virgin birth is that in God all things are possible. Okay? What we have are a bunch of facts and a bunch of fiction and some myth, and what do we know about all of it? Does any of it matter? Does it matter that we have the facts wrong? How important are facts? If you're a Pharisee back in that time, I'm guessing the facts were very important because everything had to be black and white. There was no metaphor. There was no message behind the visual. There was no meaning behind the story. It was facts, facts, facts. The problem with facts is you have to be consistent. If you're not consistent, then the facts lose their meaning. We all watch Dragnet, right? Just the facts. Because if the two facts don't line up, then there's something wrong. Somebody's lying. There's a problem with the story. There's more digging to do. Just the facts. That's what happens when you go with just the facts. But what we know in unity, in New Thought, is that there is more than facts, right? There's truth. And is the truth dependent on the facts? The answer is no. The truth is the truth is the truth is the truth. It has always been the truth. It will always be the truth. That's what makes it the truth. And whatever appears, it may appear and be a perfect reflection of that truth. That's what we love, right? That's what we love when we say that my body is healthy, whole, and complete right here and right now. And I look in the mirror and I look healthy, whole, and complete right here and right now. That's when the reflection is perfect. The perfect reflection of the truth behind it. And there are other times when I don't look perfect, whole, and complete. And that's not what's showing up in my life. And the reflection is dulled. The reflection is clouded. The reflection is wavy. Because I'm not there yet. It's not in my consciousness yet. Or in that moment that I am perfect, whole, and complete. Because it's only in our consciousness that these things, these truths, come out and are reflected perfectly. So what is the truth about the story of Christmas? I would say that it's the story of giving and receiving. Would anyone argue with that? Would anyone who has spent the last day, week, month wishing and shopping and stuffing and wrapping and moving and delivering, could you possibly believe that it's not about giving and receiving? Why do we give and receive at Christmas? Oh, we are back to that three wise man thing, aren't we? That's what my mom told me. I said, why do we do this? She said, it symbolizes the three wise men coming and giving gifts to baby Jesus. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Which I'm not sure what the difference between frankincense and myrrh are. Apparently they're both smelly tree resin. Gold I know. But even at that young age, I knew that a baby had no use for gold and certainly no use for tree resin. So I wasn't sure what the big deal was. And it's really hard for me to believe that we have all of the songs, all of the singing, all of the gift buying, all of the messages, all of the cards and the trees that we cut down and drag inside and make to look like something they're not, or something not made to look like a tree. It's all hard for me to believe that this is all somehow symbolic of three wise men and baby Jesus. But it is symbolic about the giving and the receiving. And that's what's important here. The giving and the receiving. What is the truth of giving and receiving? Is it a principle? Is it a truth? Is it a law? It's a principle. The principle of giving and receiving. And giving and receiving are not two different things. They're not opposites like we often think that they are. Anybody here ever been told that it's better to give than to receive? Jesus said that, right? So it has to be true. My mother said it, so it's probably true. Sorry, Mom. Can I use this one? Yeah, you can use that. All talking about are not opposites, though. What we're talking about is polarity, the giving and the receiving. And I know some of you follow Gary Simmons. And Gary Simmons talks about this polarity of giving and receiving, and how he brings up the symbol of infinity, which is that figure 8 that moves around and around. And he shows that it moves around and around the two polarities, because polarities are not opposites. You can't have a North Pole without a South Pole, but they're not opposites. They're not working against each other. You can't have big without small. But there's no big or small in God, because big and small is not working against each other. They're not opposites. And it's the same way with the giving and the receiving. They're not opposites. They're simply different poles that define this flow, this infinite flow. And you can't have one without the other. That's why it's so important for us to learn how to give and how to receive. And more important than either one of those is to learn how to be in that flow, that continuous flow. Is it more blessed to give than to receive? Or my mother would say better to give than receive. Jesus said, it's more blessed to give than to receive. And I think that's probably closer to the truth. And we always manage to, screw things up when we repeat it long enough. And it becomes a better or worse thing. It becomes a judgment thing. But the difference is that when we are in that animal mind, that old way of thinking where we are separate, and we are of the world, physical beings of the world, and that's as good as it gets. And there is this separation, and there is duality, and there is good and evil. When we're in that place, giving and receiving seem like two different things. But when we go to the other place, that newer way of thinking, that more profound way of thinking, that place in our heart which we know is true, where we know wholeness and oneness, where we know we are one with God, then we're living as spirit in the world. And in spirit, the duality fades away. Even the polarity fades away. Because what do we know of God? God is eternal giving. Right? God never stops giving. God creates, and God lives in, through, and as its creation. That's the way it works. And the nature of God is to give. Well, who is God giving to? What is God giving to? If God is living in and through and as creation, in and through and as each person in this room, then God is giving to itself. And that's the message for us. This whole idea of giving to yourself. I'm not talking about buying yourself Christmas gifts. Although I do that without much guilt. How else am I going to get an iPad? But this self-giving, this idea of self-giving, or giving of self to self, cancels out this idea of sacrifice. This other message that we're given about this birth of Jesus and the birth of Christ. That this is God's sacrifice. That something of God is being sacrificed for my benefit and for your benefit and for the benefit of everyone from Adam and Eve on. But if God gives of itself to itself, where's the sacrifice? Right? Christmas is more than a precursor to Easter. Christmas is about giving. Eternal giving. Always giving. And that idea that we are perfect and whole. That there is only one sonship, one Son of God, as we would say. One community of mankind. One race consciousness of which we are all a part. And so when I give to you, I'm giving to myself. When you give to me, I'm receiving from myself. And there
is no separation, and there is no good and evil, and there is no better or worse. There's only the blessing of giving. Myrtle Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, she put it this way: now, because of God's great understanding, the great understanding and love which Jesus Christ has helped us to comprehend, we are beginning to catch glimpses of what the Father is and what he has for us and what we are in truth. We are beginning to learn that life is our gift from the Father, a gift that is never withdrawn, never lessened, and never limited by the giver. It's the gift of immortality. Not physical immortality, because that always gets us into trouble when we're looking for that. There was that Greek goddess, and she fell in love with the Trojan, remember? Because Trojans are handsome and bronze and buff. And she asked Zeus to make him immortal, like her, so that they could live happily ever after. Zeus didn't think that was a good idea, but he did it anyway. And so her Trojan lover became immortal, but she apparently wasn't very specific in the way she had made her request. And eternal youth was not part of it. No. He became immortal and grew old. And I don't care if you are a Trojan warrior. Apparently after a couple hundred years, you lose a little something. So that's not the kind of immortality we're talking about. We're talking about the immortality of life itself. This life that is our life, that we talked about earlier. There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is my life now. It's that life that's eternal. And it's eternal now. If it has ever been eternal, it's eternal right now. It never ends. And it has no beginning. That was the message that Jesus brought. The message and the example that he was. That his life and God's life was one life. That his life and my life is one life. That our life and God's life is one life. That was the message over and over and over. Now there's some other ones. But that immortality, that is the gift of Christmas. So great, we're immortal. Should make us happy. Now what? What do you do with that? What's the meaning behind that? What's the purpose of that? What's the practical application of finally being shown, being brought to our awareness, this Christ consciousness which always was and always will be, that we are just now even becoming more and more aware of? What does it do for us? It gives us freedom. Freedom not only from death, but freedom from the fear of death. Freedom from the fear that this is all there is. Freedom from the fear that this is our one chance. And this is the big gamble, right? God's big gamble. That he will make us immortal. That he did. Well, what if we all decide, okay, I can do whatever I want then, right? I can be as greedy as I want, right? I wouldn't be out in the snow on a day like today, right? And if I was out in the snow, I wouldn't be here, right? If it didn't matter, if I was immortal, if there was no end to this thing called my life. Well, this is what we know. We know that we live out of who we know we are. Only to the degree that we know our immortality, only to the degree that we can know what that means and who we are, only to that degree can we live. And what do we know about who we are then? What do we know if our life is God's, we know that our essence is love, our experience is joy, and our nature is to give. Our essence is love, our experience is joy, and it is our nature to give. Thank you all. Merry Christmas.